The morning began like any other in Oakage Estates, our supposedly perfect suburban enclave. I was perched on the front porch sipping my coffee, keeping an eye on my son as he waited for the school bus that would arrive any minute. That's when I saw her, Deborah Winters. Though everyone secretly referred to her as Karen, the notorious president of our HOA, she was striding down the sidewalk with that all-too-familiar, determined glare, the kind that always promised chaos. I'd lived here for 3 years, and in that time Deborah had found reasons to cite me for everything from my grass being half an inch too long to my mailbox being the wrong shade of blue. According to her, it was Saruan, not Navy, a sin punishable by fines. As HOA president, she carried her laminated badge like a weapon, and most neighbors simply surrendered to her endless stream of violation notices. "Good morning, Deborah," I called, keeping my tone friendly, though my stomach was twisting into knots. Ethan, 10 years old, shifted beside me, his expression wary. He already learned that any encounter with the neighborhood's self-appointed dictator never ended well. Deborah didn't bother with pleasantries. "I see you're waiting for the school bus again," she said, her frown sharp and condescending, her tone reserved only for those she deemed rule breakers. "I've been meaning to discuss that." I arched an eyebrow about my son going to school. Most people consider that a positive thing. Her lips pressed together, clearly unimpressed by my subtle sarcasm. "The board has concerns about the noise, the exhaust, and the wear and tear on our private roads. Plus, it's unsightly. We're discussing a new bylaw at tonight's meeting to prohibit commercial vehicles, including school buses." I nearly choked on my coffee. "You can't be serious. Kids need to get to school, and not every parent can drive them. I have a job that starts at 8:30. For crying out loud." "That's a personal problem," she said with a dismissive wave. "Perhaps you should have considered the logistics before moving to a premium neighborhood with standards." Before I could respond, the familiar rumble of the school bus reached our ears. But instead of staying safely on the sidewalk, Deborah marched straight into the street, planting herself in the middle of the cold sack entrance. Arms crossed, she looked like a traffic guard who had completely lost it. The bus slowed, the driver's confused face visible through the windshield. He gave a polite honk, expecting the clearly unhinged woman to move. But Deborah stood firm, shaking her head and gesturing for the bus to stop. I sprinted forward, leaving Ethan frozen on the sidewalk. "Deborah, what are you doing?" "You can't block a school bus," I hissed, trying to keep my voice low. She turned with the smuggest smile I've ever seen. "Actually, I can. As HOA president, I'm enforcing a preemptive safety measure until the board votes tonight. I have every right to protect our neighborhood from unauthorized vehicles." The bus driver rolled down his window. "Ma'am, I need to pick up the children. Please move aside," he said, his calm tone betraying the absurdity of the moment. "This is private property." Deborah is shot back. "You're trespassing with your commercial vehicle. Take another route or pick up these children at the neighborhood entrance." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Parents and kids staring in shock or barely concealed. Amusement. Mrs. Rodriguez, across the street, was already recording with her phone. "Great, we're about to go virally, stepping closer. The roads may be maintained by the HA, but they're still subject to public access laws. You cannot legally prevent a school bus from performing its duty." Her face flushed. "I know the bylaws better than anyone here. Section 8.3 gives the board authority over all traffic entering Oakage Estates." I pulled out my phone. "Then you won't mind if I call the police to sort this out. I'm sure they'd be happy to clarify traffic obstruction laws versus HOA bylaws." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she lifted her chin. "Go ahead. The city police always side with official neighborhood governance. I've worked with them many times on covenant enforcement." That was all I needed. I dialed 911, keeping my eyes locked on Deborah. The crowd had grown. Parents trying to calm anxious children, worried about being late, while the bus driver made another call to his dispatcher. This had escalated far beyond a morning disagreement. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice came through loud and clear, audible to Deborah. "I need to report someone illegally blocking a school bus," I said calmly. "About 15 children are waiting, and our HOA president is physically preventing access to our street." Deborah's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps she realized this wasn't just another neighborhood spat. I gave the operator our location and a full description. "Officers are on their way," she heard the operator say. "Please stay on the line and try to keep the situation from escalating." I turned to Deborah. "The police are coming. Would you like to reconsider before this goes further?" Deborah Winters didn't back down easily. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling our HOA attorney. He'll explain to the officers that I'm within my rights." The next 10 minutes were excruciating. Children fidgeted. Parents checked watches and sent urgent emails. The bus driver made his second call to supervisors and Deborah, occasionally shifted to block the bus more effectively whenever the driver attempted to maneuver around her. Finally, police cruiser turned into the neighborhood, followed closely by a second. The crowd parted as two officers approached, their expressions professional, but betraying a hint of confusion at the bizarre standoff. "What seems to be the problem here?" the first officer asked, glancing between me, Deborah, and the bus driver. Before I could respond, Deborah launched into her rehearsed explanation, her voice syrupy and sweet, the tone she reserved for authority figures she wanted to impress. "Officer, I'm Deborah Winters, president of the Oakage Estates Homeowners Association. I'm simply enforcing our neighborhood policies regarding commercial vehicles on our private roads. The board hasn't authorized this bus to enter our community." The officer nodded politely and then turned to the bus driver, who explained that he had driven this route for 4 years without incident until today. Then the officer looked at me. "I'll keep it simple, sir. Regardless of HOA policies, it's illegal to obstruct a school bus. These children need to get to school and miss. Winters is physically preventing that from happening." The second officer, having checked a few details on his patrol car computer, walked over to confer quietly with his partner. Then the first officer faced Deborah again. "Ma'am, I need you to step aside and allow this bus to continue its route," he said firmly. Deborah's face twisted with indignation. "Excuse me, I already explained that as HOA president." "Miss Winters," the officer interrupted, his tone hardening slightly. "HOA regulations do not override state laws regarding obstruction of educational services or traffic violations. You are currently in violation of Section 4324 of the state traffic code, which specifically prohibits obstructing school transportation vehicles." Her expression was priceless. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly, but no words came out. The officer continued, "You may step aside voluntarily, or we can discuss this further at the station. Your choice." For a moment, I thought she might actually comply. But in a move that left the parents gasping, Deborah stepped closer and jabbed a finger into the officer's chest. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded, her voice high and shrill. I personally approved the landscaping variations for your precinct captains. Koi Pond last year. One phone call from me. She never got to finish. With remarkable calm, the officer stepped back. Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for obstruction of an educational service vehicle and for assaulting a police officer. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. Even I was stunned at how quickly things had escalated. The officer calmly recited Miranda rights as he cuffed Deborah, who had gone from imperious to panicked in seconds. This is outrageous, she shrieked as they led her to the patrol car. I'll have all your badges. Property values will plummet without proper covenant enforcement. You'll hear from our attorney with Deborah secured in the back of the cruiser. The second officer stayed to take statements while the first drove off. The school bus finally entered the neighborhood, the driver apologizing profusely as children climbed aboard. Ethan gave me a quick hug before boarding. Dad, he whispered with a grin. That was actually kind of awesome. The following days were a whirlwind. Deborah was released on bail, but the story had already gone viral, fueled by Mrs. Rodriguez and others. Multiple cell phone recordings from Mrs. Rodriguez and others. The headline, HOA, President arrested after blocking school bus, spread through surrounding communities in no time. Regional news picked it up shortly, after the emergency HOA board meeting. That week became the most attended in Okajie State's history. Every seat was filled and people lined the walls of the community center. Deborah sat rigidly in the front row, her attorney beside her as the vice president led the meeting. When it came time to vote, the board's decision to remove her was nearly unanimous with only her husband and a single loyal friend voting in her favor. But the consequences didn't end there. The district attorney pursued charges for both obstruction and assault on an officer. At the preliminary hearing, which I attended out of morbid curiosity, the judge was unsympathetic to Deborah's claims of merely doing her duty. A court date was set with the judge warning that a conviction could result in up to 1 year in jail and fines of up to 5-0. The real kicker came when I learned that Deborah worked as a real estate agent specializing in exclusive communities with strict covenant enforcement. After the arrest went public, her brokerage placed her on indefinite leave, citing misalignment with company values. When the verdict arrived, Deborah was found guilty on both counts. The judge, clearly making an example, sentenced her to 30 days in jail, 2 years probation, a $3,000 fine, and 100 hours of community, specifically directing school traffic at the local elementary school. She was released from the courtroom. Her face was a mask of disbelief, unable to comprehend that her HOA presidency didn't grant immunity from the laws. Everyone else followed. For once, Deborah Winters was completely speechless.